So what if you could create these really kind of complex afro-cuban style beat patterns using just logic? Well, that's the promise of the nibblers, and I'm going to show you how you can do that in a really, really neat way. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's reset the patch to scratch and start with a simple version of the patch, and we'll build up more and more complex versions. So to understand the kind of inspiration behind the patch, it's all from this book. This book is probably more famous, Godfried Toussaint's Geometry of Musical Rhythm, for coining, I believe, the term Euclidean rhythms. But one of the things he talks about a lot is these 6 rhythmic timelines that have 5 beats over 16 beats. And he sees this as like the kind of foundational 6 timelines of Afro-Caribbean music and African music. And they're the ones he puts right here. He talks about them all throughout the book. The shiko, the son clave, the soukous, the rumba, the bossa nova pattern, and the gahu. The son clave and the rumba clave are probably the most famous of the patterns, and son clave is certainly the one that he thinks is the best rhythm. So we're going to start with a pattern, a patch that allows us to produce either the son or the rumba clave. It's going to be significantly simpler than the patch we saw in the beginning, but it only uses 1 nibbler. Now, how did I figure out this patch? I wrote a computer program that can simulate the running of this system millions of times with different variables in order to kind of figure out patches that would be conducive to good rhythms. And this is the first one that I found. It only involves a single nibbler. And I found out that I can produce either the son or the rumba clave pattern just by setting up 1 nibbler correctly. So the first nibbler is set into subtract mode, and we'll say either, when one of the bits, either the 2-bit or the 1-bit, is high, we'll change what it adds by. So when it's high, we will subtract 15, and when it's low, we will subtract 7. So we'll set 7 and subtract by default, and then we'll say when the 1-bit is high, we will subtract an additional 8, right? So that means -7 when it's low, -15 when it's high. And then we will listen to its carry output. We'll plug that in. I have off-screen a landscape noon, as always. And we will listen to that output, and then we'll clock it with just a simple clock. So let's listen to what this sounds like. And you may recognize that is the son clave pattern. Now, one thing I like to do when taking these carry output patterns is I like to AND them with a clock to clean them up a little bit. This is partially because of some particularities with how the noon works, and also because sometimes the clock will stay high. So rather than keeping just a gate open, by ANDing the clock with the carry out, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able just to get exactly 1 clock pulse, at most 1 pulse every clock beat from this AND combiner. So, and then we'll just start the clock again, and let's listen. Oops. There we go. Bum, 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 bum. And that is the son clave pattern. Now, if we switch to the 2nd bit instead of the 1st bit, that's the rumba clave. And you might say, well, what did the other patterns produce? Well, they're not quite as interesting. The 8-bit just produces a beat every 8 beats, which is less interesting. And then the 4-bit, I don't know what that is. I don't think there's a name for that. But it's really, really cool that we can switch so easily between a Roomba Clave change the sound a little bit, or Son Clave. And we can play with the adds and completely ruin the effect. But like say instead of adding 7/15, we do 6/14. Totally different. And then we switch back, and we're back into Son Clave. So I think that's a really, really cool first version of this patch. Okay, so now I've unpatched that first patch so we can set up our more complex patch. And this is the one that will be capable of reproducing the Suku pattern, the Gahu pattern, the Bossa Nova Clave pattern, the Son Clave, and the Roomba Clave. It's not capable of doing the Chico without some alterations, but there are other patterns that are capable of doing that. Nevertheless, the importance is not that we can do all of them, just that we can do a bunch of them. Seems pretty neat. Nothing guarantees that we can do all of them with a single pattern. So to find this, again, I ran my program over millions and millions of combinations and found one patch in which just by changing the add on the second nibbler, I could switch between these 5 patterns. And I don't know what that means. It might mean that under whatever symmetry this kind of logical combination is representing, these patterns are identical. I wonder if that means anything for Toussaint's research. Not sure. Nevertheless, let's talk about the patch. So the patch basically says, run this nibbler, look at its 8 and its 4-bit, and use that to switch between 2 different adds on the first nibbler. So when the 8 and the 4-bit are high, we'll add 11. When the 8 and the 4-bit are low, we'll add 3. So we'll set this by default to add 3, which we already have it right now. It's in add mode. And then we'll take the 8 and the 4-bit and we'll AND them together. And an easy way to AND them together is using the bit mix in AND mode. You can see the switches are both down, so we're in AND mode. We'll take the 8-bit. We'll take the 4-bit, AND them together, and we'll take that output and we'll add that into the add 8. So now when this is high, this will add 11, 8 plus 3. When it's low, it'll just add 3. Let's take the clock out, the same clock we're using to drive the first nibbler. We'll put it into the second, and then we'll reset them. I don't know if you have to do that. Usually they stabilize in some way, but I just do it to be on the safe side. So first, let's listen to the Son Clave pattern. We get that when this one is set to 8, 4, 2, 1. Reset them again, and then let's listen. There's the Son Clave pattern. And then what if we switch it to, from instead of 7, we switch it to 10, we should get the Roomba Clave pattern. So we'll do 8, 2, and then reset them. Bum, 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 bum. So those are the ones we've heard before, but pretty cool that we can do it just by switching the add on the second nibbler. So let's listen to the Suku now. That one's pretty different than the rest. So because it has 2 beats that play in 2 successive 16th notes that play right after each other. So that's 14, and we'll set that to 8, 4, 2, reset them. There we go. But that's the kind of characteristic Suku sound. The Gahu pattern is 12, so we'll take the 2 off, and then we'll set them again. I really like that one. And then the Bossa Nova Clave pattern is like kind of underwhelming because it's the same thing as the 6 beats over 16 Euclidean pattern, but you'll hear that at 5. So 4, 1, bum 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 bum. Nevertheless, Bossa Nova, very important clave pattern for Bossa Nova music, obviously. But the cool thing now is we can listen to some of these other outputs and send them into different channels of the Landscape Noon, which is again my drum sequencer, which is off screen, and we can listen to what comes out. So like, let's say I take the carry out of the nibbler and take that into a second channel of the drum. Now you'll see these are the same or very, very similar. What if I do this, change this to the Son Clave pattern? Now we're getting something pretty neat, I think. Yeah. Well, or what if we take one of the other outputs from the first nibbler? And then, again, since this is a whole ecosystem, you can just keep doing this. Let's say we'll take out a pattern we know will come out a lot, which is like the 1, and we'll put that into a third. A little aggressive there. There we go. Much better. And then the neat thing is, since this is all an ecosystem, if we change just one of these parameters, the whole pattern of all of them will change together. And when I change this back, if we reset, we have that Sol and Clave pattern going. Maybe we'll switch it to Roomba now. Remember, that's 10, 8, 2. Totally different sound. Anyway, I think this is incredibly fun. There's a million different things to try. Like, for example, what happens if we subtract rather than add? I mean, it's cool. That's what happens. What happens if we listen to, say this one? Oh God. That's the danger of the landscape noon. It gets kind of wild sometimes. What happens if we go back to that suku pattern, 14, 8, 4, 2? And don't forget, we also have our tuned outputs of the nibbler. So let's see what happens if we listen to the tune and put that into one of the other landscape noon patterns. Or a different one. I like this. Whoa, if we turn up the speed a little bit. And then let's go back to Sol and Clave to finish it out. That's 7 again. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that this is a cool way of visualizing some of the things the nibbler is capable of. Thanks so much.